Okay. All right, people are coming in. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, thank you again, everyone, for being here. This is a first of a series of events for zine releases. And so, this is kind of exciting. It's our very first one. And I'm Tara Huey. For anyone who hasn't met me yet, I'm the program manager for Sound Defense Alliance. And for anyone who is unfamiliar with Sound Defense Alliance or SDA, we're a nonprofit who is working to protect our people, communities, environment, and wild and marine life from harmful Navy Growler jet impacts. And joined tonight by Nicole Price, who is our media coordinator, as well as Howard Garrett from the Orca Network and Langley Whale Center. So Nicole will also be helping go through this little presentation, and then at the end, Howard will have some time to share some of his experiences and stories. So as many of you all know, this is a presentation and little event specifically focused on growler jets and orca whales, marine life in general, but the focus mainly is orca whales. And to be honest, I just wanted to talk about some cool facts about orcas because I know so many of us are orca lovers. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. And yeah, let's see. All right, Nicole, take it away.
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay? Sweet. So if anyone hasn't heard of a zine before, the word zine is a part of the word magazine. So it usually stands for a mini magazine or little magazine. However, zines come in all shapes and sizes. Um, and a zine, what it is, kind of translates more so to a self-published magazine. So they can be as little as the size of my hand or even bigger format. Um, so mini zine, mini magazine, or self-published magazine is what a zine is. Just a little bit of history of zine making throughout the last couple decades and how it came to be. Um, zine making was the term zine was coined in the 1940s through the science fiction fandom at the time. However, zine making can be traced all the way back to the Harlem Renaissance, having its roots in Black culture and subcultures. So, authors, poets, activists, and people who couldn't otherwise get their work published or get their message out to the general public began making zines to release their art, stories, or political messages. Um, Zine making in general really picked up in the 1960s, which kind of started a very underground press that was really thriving at the time that helped give marginalized voices a chance to be heard. Zine making was really a pivotal point in many of the civil rights movements going on in the US at the time. Um, in the 1970s and 80s, zine making became huge in the punk scene. I think that's how I originally kind of knew about zine making was through different punk or alternative spaces, which was fostered by a strong DIY culture of the time. And then, of course, zine making at that time became a lot easier to mass produce because of copy shops and local libraries having printers and copiers. So people didn't have to write and repeat or only have a couple copies of their zines. Now they could make tens of hundreds to get out to people and bring to events. Then in the 1990s, the Riot Girl movement, if people aren't familiar, was a underground feminist movement at the time that empowered women through different expressions of gender. Zine making was huge in this movement in the 90s and helped zines become serialized. So there were many different groups within this movement making multiple volumes of zines that had political messaging or comics. Artwork from people, which really popularized serializing zines and making them different series. Today, zine making has really exploded in many different ways because of the internet, of course. Um, Many people can sell their zines online or like SDA plans to do, which is send digital zine kits, posting the documents so people can print them at home, um, and make so many more things accessible. So if you want to learn how to sew, you can download a free digital copy of a zine online on how to sew, print it, and then you have your little how to sew booklet at home. Um, Even though technology and the internet has made zine making more popular, its roots in underground movements and in subcultures is still really strong. How I kind of first found zines were at local cafes, independent bookstores, different festivals I've been to. So I do think zine making still has its roots in underground culture, but is becoming more and more mainstream, especially with the need to get certain political messages out in the world. Um, the thing I love about zine making the most, and what is, I think, so crucial to why it's important, I think why we decided zine making would be a really great series and project to pick up, is that it's really accessible. It can be made out of any material and with any message or artwork you would like. And because it really just takes most of the time like a letter size piece of paper or a printer piece of paper, um, and a pair of scissors and even a pen and paper if you want to make your own. It's really accessible to make and really accessible to share for people, which I think is something SDA has been trying to do, finding different ways to get the message out about how harmful growler jets can be, but also for specific issues. Sometimes it's hard to wrap all into one how much the growler jets impact parts of our region and our communities. Um, so it can really streamline certain issues and give you a little pocket, something to give your mom or your coworker that's wondering about it. I am from the East Coast originally, so having this little pocket zine to give out when my friends ask me, how do the growler jets all the way on Whidbey Island in Washington impact the orca whales that I care so much about? And I could ramble on and on about it, or I can just also give them a little pocket zine, which helps spread our messaging and get information out there in a new way that's not just sharing a social media post and can feel physical to hold and have and physically read rather than just scrolling through a screen. So yeah, that's a bit about zine making and the history of zines. Um, yeah, it's definitely probably going to evolve as things in our world change as well. But it's been around for a long time, which is really cool.
Cool. Thank you, Nicole. So I'll go through the zine next, and Nicole can kind of talk about each page. But yeah, I just wanted to add in that the way, like, I love seeing zines at my friend's house. A lot of them have them on their coffee tables or even as little light bathroom reading, which I think is so fun because you just pick up topics that you never thought you'd learn about. Also a great thing to keep in your bag and just hand out to people if you see the jet or you hear the jets flying and people are looking up, maybe just hand them a little zine. So we'll go ahead and go through the zine now.
Yeah, so this is the front cover of the zine. Every time we hear the Jets, so do they. Um, this is something I think Tara and I came up with when we were talking about um, just our frustrations. And I think we all have times where the Jets have impacted us or they've been very loud and able to close a door or put on our headphones. But um, different animals throughout our region cannot do that, especially um, marine life and especially the orcas who depend on sound. So, um, yeah. As most of us here know, the Puget Sound is the largest estuary by water volume in the continuous United States, which is home to a myriad of marine life. The Salish is home to both abundant and threatened species of marine life, including six different whale species, many which are endangered. Um, Threatened stellar sea lions, threatened and endangered salmon populations, steelhead and rockfish species, and endangered leatherback sea turtles. So while the zine talks mainly is going to be focusing on how orcas are impacted, um, if the orcas are impacted, so are all of these other creatures, um, and many that also depend on sound for survival, just like the orcas do. So there are between 70 and 75 southern resident orcas left in the Salish Sea. Our friends at the Orca Network kind of explained that fact that that can fluctuate and it kind of changes year by year. So I think if you Google it, it says that right now it's at 74, but it roughly fluctuates between 70 and 75, which is not many, as we know. Especially because they used to really, really thrive in this area specifically. So, um, over the last decade, the Navy has increased their EA-18 Growler jet operations on NSA Whidbey by 4 times the amount. I know many people that have been living in the area for a long time have heard this and felt this. Um, and the Growler jets are some of the loudest in the world. So this rapid increase in this amount of time is life-changing for all of us. Scientists have stated that the implications of a concurrent change to more powerful aircraft and increased operations for noise pollution have not been measured, leaving knowledge gaps and ability to access vulnerability to both people and wildlife, including endangered, threatened, or sensitive species. So there's still a lot that's not measured and known, which can make it easy to diminish the problem when if we hear it, so do they, and if we feel it, so do they. So even though there's not too much data yet, there is still a lot, but there's a lot more that could be had for sure. Um, One research study that was done did find that growler jet noise can reach orcas as far as 100 feet underwater. The orca's ability to hunt, communicate, migrate, and survive is impacted by these frequent flyovers, which have been recorded at over 100 plus decibels. Um, there is a lot more information, amazing documentary called Sonic Sea, if you want to check that out, that talks about how noise pollution in general, specifically shipping containers, impacts orcas. Um, but luckily, there's been one study done specifically talking about jet noise and growler jets specifically on the orcas, um, which 100 feet deep of water is very, very deep, especially with how much that can kind of fluctuate around the sound and deepness levels in different parts of the Salish Sea. So there's not many places to hide or escape that sound.
Yeah, and I just wanted to input too that this research that found the 100 feet, the only reason why 100 feet was the number they found was because that was the length of their hydrophone cable.
Mm,
So the noise could actually penetrate a lot deeper, and we just are unaware of that because our technology just wasn't there right then.
right. And this is one of those images of the shipping containers that I was talking about earlier. Sounds at 85 decibels can cause hearing damage to humans. It's kind of when hearing damage begins to set in at that level of sound. While we have some ways to protect ourselves from harmful noise, they do not. Like I said earlier, even we know that closing a door doesn't always shield out that sound. Putting on sound protection can only do so much, and often we don't have it around to do that. But we can at least mitigate it to some way. We could leave if we wanted to. Um, they cannot, they cannot escape the sound. In that documentary mentioned Sonic Sea, they talk about whales beaching themselves due to shipping container noise and that vibration, which if the shipping containers are letting off that and it's impacting different whale species that much, growler jets with that noise reaching that deep, I'm sure do the same. Orcas can't just put on hearing protection or close a window to mitigate sound. Whales have been recorded beaching themselves to escape noise pollution from shipping vessels. This is our action page of the zine. There are many different ways you can take action to help protect the orcas and kind of help mitigate or fight this issue or bring awareness to it. One of the things you can do is sign a petition on the Wild Orca's website, which is www.wildorca/take action, to tell NOAA fisheries to recognize that military aircraft noise, like vessel noise, is a threat to endangered killer whales. So, like we said, kind of due to still some of the lack of research, how Tara mentioned, even measuring and getting that 100 feet, that doesn't even fully measure the impact. Due to that lack of research, a lot of different governing bodies, different companies and corporations do not acknowledge military aircraft as a threat, while there is a lot more acknowledgement of vessel noise pollution as a threat. So this petition um, is trying to call on those fisheries to acknowledge that and then hopefully challenge them to take action. Another way to take action is to follow there, as we know, throughout the Puget Sound and Salish Sea, there's tons of organizations that are working to fight and protect the orcas. One of which is the Orca Network, which we have our friends from there here today to kind of speak and tell you more about. But it's really great to keep updated on what's going on. I think with so much going on in the news and in the world right now, it can be challenging to figure out what to focus on and how to help and how to uh, help keep each other safe and our environment safe. And I think picking the orcas to care about, picking growler jet noise and noise pollution and how that impacts them, and paying attention to them is a great place to start because these are animals that we all love and care about and appreciate. And they don't have a voice in our greater world. They have a voice in their world, but not in our greater sphere. So it's so important to keep up with organizations like the Orca Network, the Langley Whale Center, Wild Orca, just to name a few. So yeah, following their work and efforts. The Orca Network specifically is doing a lot more than just noise pollution impacts on orca whales, but is trying to fight and protect against all kind of issues impacting them. So, and then to learn more about specifically protecting marine life from Navy growler jet noise, following us at Sound Defense Alliance, keeping up with our social media and our website, we try to keep as updated as we can about developments on that, which I know coming up in our presentation, we'll kind of talk about the L pod that just came back, but um, we really try and stay updated on that and keep posted about new research. If there is more new research about it, we will let you know for sure. So it's definitely important to keep up with us um, to get new information regarding this and other ways to take action, of course. So how to fold the zine. So those were all of the pages. I have some hard copy examples for you guys. So I'm going to walk you through on video, but this is a great graphic on how to fold a zine. Um, the end goal is a little pocket zine. The format we specifically use is called an 8-panel zine. So it has 8 pages, like those 8 slides that were just shown. I have really, I have really small hands, so they do kind of come smaller than my hand, which they can fit in your wallet, in your pocket. So in your Orca zine kit, so you guys uh, you will get a PDF file of our zine, which you can print out at home, at the library. The most of it, except our logo, is black and white. So, but it's very easy to print just on black and white ink. So I'm going to show you guys how to fold this. If you have a printer piece of paper with you and a pair of scissors, you can practice folding and even use that to doodle and make a zine on your own. But I'm going to show you now. So the 8-panel zine has kind of 2 rows here. So first you fold it into hot dog style. I'll be using kind of classroom craft language for this. But you're going to fold it first into hot dog style and get that crease pulled down. And then you'll unfold it so you'll have a middle crease here. Then next, you're going to fold it hamburger style down the middle, almost like kind of book format. This way. And it's easier to push down the crease on your table or desk in front of you. So you'll have that middle hamburger crease and then the middle hot dog crease. So in the hamburger side, then you're going to do a mini hot dog, I guess, but then you'll fold it one more time inward. And the goal is basically to get all of the panel sides creased like a book. So the pages will be more pronounced and it'll be easy to fold together. So get the creases down there and then like that. So after doing the hot dog, then hamburger, the mini hot dog, you should have all of the pages kind of creased together, almost like an accordion. Um, so after the mini hot dog fold, you'll pull it back out this way to a 4-panel. And this is where we're going to cut. You only cut once, and it's a very small cut, so it's no pressure. We're going to be cutting from here, so that middle fold, to the middle here. So the ends of the paper will be out this way. So you want to cut on the inward side. It's better to cut kind of, you don't want to cut too far into it, but the great thing about zine making is it's hard to mess up because even if the creases are a little off, it still folds in to a book, which is wonderful. If you take your scissors and line it up, and then just cut to the middle like that. So you'll have 2 little legs like this. So when you take it out, we'll have all of our creases and then kind of a little mouth in the middle. Then to get it into book form, we fold it back in a hot dog with that hole in the middle there. So as you'll see, we have the front cover and then our back cover here. So we'll keep an eye on where those are at. But you kind of just push that in the middle here into 4 sections, almost like a pinwheel, like that. And then we find the side here where our front and back cover are, and then you kind of just fold it into book form and then press those creases down this way. So it'll go from that 4 section, fold it into a book. And you can kind of emphasize, recrease up the book to flatten it a bit. And then you have the mini zine here. And you can flip through page by page. In the digital Orca zine kits you guys will get, there is a PDF layout. So if you want to make a zine at home, it kind of shows you where to place the front cover and back cover on that 8-panel, like that. But it should fold like this. Also in the zine kits, you'll be getting a little 1-minute YouTube video on how to fold in case your memory can't. I had to practice folding these a couple times even before this, because even though I've been making zines for a bit, it still is nice to have a visual. But they're super easy, can fit in your pocket, and really easy to fold. And even that cut, I've ripped that before if I haven't had scissors. But yeah, then you have yourself a little booklet. It's cool.
Yeah. So thank you, Nicole. That was really great. I'll be sending out an email to everyone with a digital zine kit. So you'll get the PDF of our Orca zine that you can print on your home printer. You'll get the YouTube video. You'll get the instructions how to fold. And so keep your eye out on the email for that. I'll send that probably later this week. I wanted to share a video with you all that was sent to us from someone who had the amazing experience of getting to see the endangered southern resident orca L-pod return to Penn Cove for the first time in decades. I'm sure so many of you all heard about the momentous news when the L-pod returned to Penn Cove, and it was really exciting. But one thing that I think pretty much every news article and news report left out was how at the end of the orca's visit, the growler jets started their touch and go operations. So I will be sharing the video next on the screen, and I just wanted to give a trigger warning because I know so many people here tonight probably live under the jets themselves. And so the video actually, it's beautiful if you turn your volume off. Um, it's about 3 minutes long, a little less than that. So if you personally don't feel like listening to growler jet noise tonight and don't want to put yourself through that, you're more than welcome to turn off your audio. And then once the video is over, you can rejoin us and put your volume back up. So I will be playing it next. Anyone who would like to, please turn off your volume now.
Why are they doing
Oh,
these?
they're doing touch and goes. They're doing touch and goes. That's quite cool. They're doing touch and goes.
All right, so we're back. People can turn your volume back on. I know my heart personally, every time I watch that video, I'm like tearing up, kind of thinking about how the orcas can hear that underwater. And I know my heartbeat goes up every time I hear the growlers. So it's very upsetting to see that juxtaposition between the beautiful background of the mountains and the orcas, and then knowing how much they're being impacted by the growlers. And again, I know so many of you here tonight know exactly how that feels. So thanks for sitting through that. And the person who sent it to us, she also included a story about how her camera was shaking while the jets were flying, and how it could have been just a coincidence, but the orcas did leave after the growlers started flying. So we actually have Howard Garrett here tonight, who is from the Orca Network and who can talk more about this pretty incredible historic moment about the orcas returning, and then also how the growlers were there as well. Howard, do you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about the Orca Network and Langley Whale Center?
Okay, sure. And first, thank you for hosting this zine. It's really an interesting concept, and for the shout out to Orca Network and for the chance to talk about orcas because that's what we do. We started actually in 1995, dedicated to bringing back the one Southern resident that even back then was the sole survivor of the captures that took place in Penn Cove in 1970 and 1971. And that's, of course, they called her Lolita, but Tokitai, or Toki, as she as she knew as she was called. Um, and that evolved into the sighting network because my wife Susan uh, worked in the Admiralty Head Lighthouse as the volunteer coordinator for the beach watchers. And so she saw whales go by and she was always thrilled by them when they came down into Admiralty Inlet. And so she would call some friends and alert them. And then email came along and there grew a small list of friends and contacts that wanted to hear about the whales. And so she contacted them, and that has just grown and grown and grown until now. It's something like 17,000 people are on the email list and 130 or 40,000. I haven't looked just lately or on the Facebook page. And so a whole lot of people are really interested in seeing whales. It does something to people. I call it whale magic. It never lets up. I'll tell you, I've been at this for many decades, and it it just affects me every time I see them. I just gives me a kind of a calm, peaceful feeling. So we've branched out into a stranding network and into the Langley Whale Center and an educational department where we have a whole speakers bureau, to respond to requests to come out to youth groups or yacht clubs or virtually anyone who wants to hear about whales and give them the natural history and the background, the history of the research and how we know what we know. And it's just a fascinating topic, and it's ever growing, and the science is ever evolving, and there's still much more to learn about them. Um, and I would like to give you some context, some background on what was happening that day. And I hadn't seen that video before, but that perfectly corresponds to what I heard from our friend Jamie Cantrell, who was there. Was that her video? Did she send
Yeah, it
that to
was.
you? Okay, good. Because that is what she told us happened. But let me give you some background, the rest of the story that led up to that moment, because that gives it ever more impact, more emotional power because of what led up to that. They came in to that's so LPOD, the 33 members of LPOD came down Admiralty Inlet into Puget Sound on November 1st. And JPOD had already been down there in what we call the Possession Triangle between Possession Sound, Edmonds, and Kingston, more or less, that whole big area down almost to Seattle. It's just where the salmon, especially the coho and I don't know, the chum and blackmouth chinook circulate. They kind of stage there before they go up into their extremes. So it's a happy hunting ground. It's a great place. And so JPOD had been there since October 19. So on November 1, LPOD and KPOD came down and joined them. And for that day, they had, well, we call it a super pod. It's a gathering. It's like a social bonding experience. Orcas are so social. They're so just totally. bonded with each other. And it's not just for feeding or for traveling. It's a social experience that they have all the time. They're always engrossed completely in and engaged with each other. And they're performing ceremonies and rituals and just socializing, just partying. And you can hear it. You can hear it with the hydrophones. You can hear the chatter. And of course, it's their tradition. It's just among their many traditions is the way that they socialize and gather together, um, and roll around on each other and just do all kinds of interesting things to reaffirm and rebuild their bonds, and it sure looks like they are very affectionate toward each other. So at the end of that day, November 1, um, they parted ways. And the next day, very early in the morning, J-Pod left, came up Admiralty Inlet along with K-Pod. K-Pod came in with L-Pod and left with J-Pod, leaving L-Pod down there on November 2nd. And on that day, they went up into Possession Sound. And all indications from all the reports, and we have, I counted 125 reports from people um, from all angles, virtually all hours of the day. They crossed the Mukilteo ferry lane up past Hat Island, and they approached Camino Head. And they kind of backed off and turned around and finally sort of inched their way up to Camino Head. And that is very significant because Camino Head was the place where during the captures, they were herded. And by herded, I mean they were terrorized. They were traumatized with bombs in the water, seal bombs that underwater, is an incompressible substance. And when an explosion goes off, that that impact doesn't dissipate like it does in the air. I mean, it's bad enough if there's an explosion nearby and it comes at you through the air, but through the water, it's like a sledgehammer. It just hits really hard. And of course, their hearing is their way of life. It's how they navigate, how they communicate, it's how they find food, it's how they orient to the world around them. So their hearing is very sensitive. And so they had to run. So they went up to Camino Head, and that was where, since they had been captured before, that was 1970, and the capture started really in 1965, that they knew that their young ones were going to be taken. So they performed a decoy operation where the adults without young ones went east over toward Port Susan, while the mothers with their babies took off north underwater as long as they could stay under. But the ones that basically sacrificed themselves and deliberately attracted the catcher boats with the bombs, that happened right at Camino Head. And that's where L-Pod went that first day that they were up there on November 2nd. And they stayed in that exact area for about 2 hours, which is really unusual. And they did very strange behaviors where they kind of would go north and then south and then east and then west, and but they kind of hovered and paced over that same exact area where that terrible event happened. And even the dog is upset about this. But it's really important to know that there's only one member of L-Pod that was alive during the captures that is still alive, and that's L-25, Ocean Sun. So all the others had never been there before, had never experienced that. And the feeling that they gave to me that throughout, and I'll tell you that the next couple of days were the same kind of feeling, that they were really tentative about it, really reluctant, really skittish, and that they felt the trauma, even though they weren't there. They don't have the direct memory except for L25. The rest did not, experience it directly, but they were just very reluctant to go there. But once they got there, they performed these, I have to call them ceremonies or rituals where they kind of paced back and forth. So they did that until late in the afternoon. And then that's November 2nd. Then they went north up Saratoga Passage as the sun set. So then on the 3rd, they were up in, well, between Skagit Bay and Colnell Point, or um, off Whidbey Island, but not in Penn Cove at first. They were first seen a couple of miles east of Penn Cove, but then they went on in, and about 11 o'clock or 11:20 by some counts, they went into Penn Cove, and they completely shut down their acoustics. They did not make a sound, and there were people there studying how their sounds, actually, to try to correlate their sounds with their behavior, but they couldn't study anything because they weren't making any sounds. They were completely silent. So they went into Penn Cove on November 3rd, but they didn't go all the way in. They went about halfway. Penn Cove is about 4 miles deep, and they went about 2 miles, which is about to the Coopville Wharf, between the Coopville Wharf and Monroe Landing. And again, they kind of milled around a little bit and kind of shuffled and paced, and then they turned around and left. So again, it's sort of a feeling of, some of them maybe you really didn't want to do it, or they just had a feeling of, this is going to be traumatic. This is going to be horrible. But that can only be because L25 was able to communicate somehow what happened in 1970 and 1971 in Penn Cove. So the next day, on the 4th, on the 3rd, they went all the way down to Langley. But then on the 4th, they were back up in Saratoga Passage. And they finally, later in the afternoon, I think it was about 2 o'clock, they entered into Penn Cove again. This time, they went all the way. This is November 4th. They went all the way to the far reaches, to the Captain Whidbey End. And that is exactly where the capture operations took place. That's where the capture teams set up corrals, big wooden enclosures with walkways so they could walk around, and where they separated the moms from the babies, where they pushed all the others out. And there were divers in the water with the whales, and there were people in little tiny rowboats out there to try to sort out the whales, and so they could take the juveniles. And not once was there even a gesture of hostility from the whales toward them. They they seem to have, as a part of their cultural tradition, a prohibition against harming any human. They just won't do it. And they had plenty of cause. I mean, try to, separate a mama bear from her babies sometime. I mean, you would think that they would just by instinct would react and fight back, but they didn't. Their cultural traditions just overrode their whatever, instinct they might have had to do that. So they went to that spot, that very spot between the Captain Whidbey Inn and the Juan de Fuca dock, the oil dock, whatever it's called, which is exactly where the corrals were set up. And we know that because John Stone was the son of the owner of the Captain Whidbey Inn. And he was a teenager. I think he was 18 or 19 at the time. And so he was put into service to go back and forth to ferry people out to the corrals from the inn. And so he knew exactly where it happened. And when we started having capture commemoration events in 1998, John always brought his cuddy sark, his ketch little sailboat out to ferry people out to that capture site. And I went along, and Susan went along on a lot of them. And so we visited that exact location. So it's imprinted in my mind exactly where it was. And that is exactly where El Pod went on the afternoon of November 4th. And they again performed these very weird rituals where they kind of paced back and forth, especially L72 and her son, I think 18 or 19-year-old son, kind of split off from the others and went right to the place where the capture boats, which were seiners, which were, seine boats, when they had netted up a juvenile that they were going to ship out and sell, they would strap them onto the side of the boats, and they would park that boat right at the end of the dock at the Captain Whidbey and go in and make some phone calls and find a buyer and arrange for a truck transport and all of that. And that could take hours and hours, maybe a day or two. And in that whole time, those calves were strapped in. They were netted and strapped to the side of a boat, but they were still vocalizing. And so their families could still hear them. There was a big net across Penn Cove that prevented the adults and all the rest of them from coming over to be with their young ones. But they were in acoustic contact. They were hearing them and communicating really loudly. Everybody could hear them all around Penn Cove. There's stories of people that heard the anguish and it felt like they were screaming. So L72 and her son went right to that location and paced for an hour and a half, back and forth, back and forth. And that can't be coincidence. That was right where that happened. So they were in some way, they were commemorating, they were sanctifying, they were cleansing. I don't know. I can't project what they were doing exactly, but they were doing some kind of ritual ceremony over that exact spot. And the rest of El Pod, meanwhile, was doing all sorts of other unusual behaviors, lined up side by side, porpoising out of the water where they go real fast and kind of leap out and then turn back and a lot of going back and forth. And it was real hard for people to see what was going on because that was the day of the gale force winds. of the 50 and 60-mile-an-hour winds. So it was not good visibility. But they were having this intense moment of recollection, of somehow reliving and commemorating somehow this story of what happened there, this trauma. And we don't know how long it went on because they were still there when it got dark. And it was, nobody could hear them because of the wind. So there was no way to know how late they stayed there. And there were no boats on the water that day. So then the next day, November 5th, they were all the way down to Langley, down almost to Hat Island. And then they turned around and came back up. And there was a lot of sort of tentativeness about it. They'd come a little ways and then back up or stall out and then come a little further and then stall out again. But they gradually progressed back up toward Penn Cove, and they were almost in. They were about at Long Point, a little south of Long Point, which is the opening to Penn Cove. And that's when the growlers started doing their exercise. And they turned around, and you saw it in the video. They were, they were making their way. They were going to go back into Penn Cove. By all indications, they were headed that way. They were almost there, and they got within a mile of Penn Cove, and the growlers started growling. And you saw what happened in the video. They turned around and went away. They turned back south and just continued around Possession Point and north up Admiralty Inlet, and were gone. Actually, there was a recording from the hydrophone at the Port Townsend Marine Science Center from after midnight of L-Pod headed out. So that definitely ended whatever moment they were having, whatever social commemoration of those captures was going on that day on November 5th. And yeah, as Jamie tells it, she couldn't focus her camera because she was shaking so much from the thunder coming down from the growlers, and it was giving her a headache. So she just gave up and had to go get in her car. But it's a clear indication to me that the noise totally interrupted their this moment they were having to remember, to commemorate, and to somehow it was L25 was imparting the history that she had gone through and that their family, all of their ancestors basically had gone through in Penn Cove. And that was very rudely interrupted. And there's no question that it correlates exactly with the flyover of the growlers that they turned around and left. So I think that's to me, that's along with that research that you referenced earlier about that it was 100 decibels, 100 feet down. That clarifies for me that the orcas are hearing it. When we hear it, they hear it. So, whether it's in Admiralty or up off NAS or in Saratoga Passage, uh, wherever they're flying over water, if there's any whales anywhere nearby, they're going to be heavily impacted by it. So that's the story. Uh, so I appreciate your giving me a chance to tell it. I haven't ever told it verbally. I've written it, but I haven't told it. So this was a new opportunity for me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. That was actually really an emotional story. And I really appreciate you joining this call to share that with us. One thing that really stands out to me is that L25, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ocean Sun is the oldest known southern resident orca whale in existence at almost 100 years old. And so when a lot of people say, the jets were here first, the base was here first, she was actually here first. And
Oh yeah.
she has lived in such a quiet world that has changed so much over the years. And then not only that, I looked up today when the first Prowler jet was brought to Whidbey, and that wasn't until 1971, the same year as the captures. And then the Growler jets weren't brought until 2008. And so just imagining how this specific pod went through such a traumatic experience and such a violent experience and then left for decades because of that, to come back and try to have this moment to go through what Howard said and go through this cultural and very significant process and to be greeted by growler jets, I'm sure had a huge impact on them.
For one thing,
So
because it could have very much reminded L-25 of those bombs that they were throwing in the water at them. It's like, oh no, they're back, you know,
yeah,
like the capture teams again coming after them. It
yeah.
must have talked about triggering. It must have triggered them severely.
Definitely. And to hear you talk about how intelligent they are, that they had the ability to strategize and sacrifice themselves or come back and tell each other, like, let's all be quiet and go in and test out this area. I mean, a lot of people
Right.
talk about the experience of growlers really brings up a lot of PTSD. And I imagine the same thing happened to the orcas. So the correlation there is really important for us to keep studying and fighting for quiet areas so that our fellow animals can keep surviving. And they're endangered because of our actions, and we need to be responsible for that. Um, we do have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to open it up for any questions. If anyone has any questions about orcas, about zines, about growlers, before people start hopping off the call, I just wanted to say that the Navy's draft amended analysis to the environmental impact statement is open for comments until April 28th, and I'll include this in my email, follow-up email as well. But if anyone also wants to include just how we need more research and the Navy needs to be accountable for their impacts on orcas, I think that would be very beneficial as well. Um, Follow us on social media. We are always all posting really educational things, so make sure to grab this information before you log off. And yeah, does anyone have any questions or comments they want to share? Do you have anything you want to ask, Nicole, or share out?
Um, yeah, no specific questions, but just thank you for sharing that story. It was um when I tell people about the growler jets and their impact and talking about the orcas, I've come back home to my hometown of Baltimore on the East Coast. So I've been visiting family and friends. Like, oh, what's this organization you're working for? How was it? I spent all last summer into the fall on Whidbey and was there when the L pod returned, but missed getting to see them. And when I tell people the story about the L pod, people like, what? Wow. And like of their return, how important it is. how smart they are. And then when I do hit them with the reality of noise pollution and then the growler jets over them, like people's faces, especially, and I think to me that says magnitudes too, because I know the growler jets can feel like a very local issue. And the L pod being to this region, but the fact that all the way on the East Coast, everyone I've been telling about it, like jaws drop, are equally as moved and then also kind of horrified by how much these animals have to deal with. And I loved how Tara described that, you know, their quiet world has changed so, so much. Um, and yeah, so I don't have any questions, but just thank you so much for sharing. And um, the L pod returning was, I think, one of the reasons Tara and I, when we were talking about ideas for content or making a zine, um, the Orcas kind of felt like a right first zine, especially due to the L pod returning and that video Jamie sent us, and just how moving it was and horrifying. And um, so I'm so grateful that I've been able to kind of learn so much about this issue by making this scene. And just thank you so much for sharing your experience because it's really moving and really important. And if people all the way on the East Coast care about 70 something orcas and growler jets all the way on the other side of the country, then um, it's important. That means it's very important. And it's important even if one person cared, but um, yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. Carrie, I saw you unmuted. Did you have a question or comment?
I did. I have an observation as well. First, thank you very much for doing this. I love zines and have been collecting them for quite some time. I think they're very useful. Um, and starting off with the growlers, great. What I found, I used to be a docent at the Whale Museum and have worked with all these organizations. And what I've found is storytelling is very, very, very important. So, yes, that L pod story will bring people to tears when you understand. You don't even have to understand the life of an orca to relate. But if we could share more about what the life of the orcas are like through them, I think it would be helpful because I think there's so much we can. There's so many nonprofits, and not to take away from Orca Network or anybody, but how to cut through all of that. So when I was at the Whale Museum, it's very hard to um, get people to connect to what they can do in an actionable way through a lot of facts. So if you can somehow tell a story like you guys are with the zine or can with the zine, I think that's very effective because the closer you get to home, the less people know, and especially on the islands themselves, which is really sad. But there is a lot of care for our specific resident whales all over the world, and they're interested. And I think this is a great way of getting it out in a really broad way. So, congratulations on what you're doing. And I'm glad to be here to see its commemoration.
Yeah. No, yeah, we definitely, I mean, there's so many opportunities for more zines, and even we could do so many more about orcas and growlers. And I agree, it would be a great idea to make a story about just the return of the L pod and then
One story, yeah.
and their exit due to the growlers potentially. Um, so thank you for that. That's a really great idea. Does
Yeah. Well, the just in an addendum, Ken Balcom, he had, when we lost the one juvenile to blunt force trauma was during bombing practice by the military. So there's really big ways you can tie this in. Um, if somebody wants to even pick up the ball and create their own zines, if this is only the one you're going to do for orcas, is that what I'm beginning to understand? Is this?
No, I mean, we're open to ideas, and we're planning hopefully on doing maybe like one a month for the rest of the year.
Mhm.
Nicole, if you want to talk about some other ideas, I know we wanted to focus also on national parks and maybe veterans. But I mean, again, any ideas we're happy to work on.
Yeah, we had kind of had the intention um, of making one a month, but they're not. planned out yet. There's many months to come. So yeah, I think we've had some ideas about doing some about the national parks and the growlers flying over protected areas. But yeah, they nothing's planned. So the ideas, I love that, and I love storytelling too, and how important of a tool it is. And it's great. Thank you for sharing that, because Tara and I are sitting here like, okay, we should do a zine a month. What should we do it on? But it's great to hear feedback of, what you would like to see and what you think is useful, because we can, definitely do that for sure.
Yeah, and truly, I mean, I think the main reason too why we were both interested in starting with orcas is just because we both think orcas are really cool and
Yeah, they're really cool.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
storytelling is a great way for us to also have this opportunity to just do more research on things we're interested in and then get to share that with our members.
Right.
Well, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
be following. I'll definitely be following.
Good, I'm glad. All right, well, if no one has any more comments or questions, we'll go ahead and end this great event. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Nicole. And look out for that email with the digital zine kit so you can print yours at home and help us raise more awareness around that. And please share this story with everyone. I think it's really important to tie together the impact of the growlers on the orcas. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Right.
you.